On this episode, we're talking essential forms, feelings, and business. You're watching Unbillable. A couple weeks ago, we talked on this vlog about the shelter order and how it was impacting business. I think I referenced 93% of my business was down, and I think at least at this point I would estimate in the fourth week now of this order, and that was probably an overstatement. I'm a little busier than just 7%. See, the business that I operate is a litigation law practice, so a lot of what I do does involve the court system. With the court system operating on an extremely restricted, only emergency basis, a lot of my business has kind of been grinded to a halt. But when I said 93%, that might have been me talking sort of like that initial impact. Obviously, it was very rough just from a personal standpoint to like furlough the employees, but it's something that we had to do. We really had no choice as the flow of business stopped so abruptly. But it actually gave an opportunity for the non-litigated matters, the things that aren't going through the court system. It gave a chance for those matters to kind of rise to the surface. And believe it or not, I mean, I'm not going to say we're busy. We're nowhere near busy. Don't get me wrong. And when I say we, there is no we. I mean, it's really only me going into the office to check on things. I'll touch on that a little bit later. But it's more than 7%. And more than anything else, I'm very grateful that it's more than 7%. I'm grateful for every little bit of percent that it is. And maybe at a minimum, that's a great takeaway from this entire shelter experience. If something new happens in the world of real estate, you better believe the California Association of Realtors will bring you forms. Forms. Look at me, I'm a butterfly of real estate forms.
Finally, I'm a beautiful butterfly.
These are not just the documents it takes to buy a piece of property in the state of California. These are just specific forms regarding the COVID-19 virus, the pandemic. So many forms, so many boxes to check or not check, so many blanks to fill in or not fill in, so many things to write in. Do you even know what to put in there? Do you even know what boxes to check? An interesting thing about a form is that the more people use forms, the less they're actually reading the document. I mean, I can tell you firsthand how many clients tell me it was a form, so I just signed it. But these are some of the most important documents you might ever actually sign your name to. I mean, this is a real estate transaction in the state of California. It probably is, your biggest single asset transaction. So read the forms. Make sure you know why a box is being checked, and make sure you know why you're signing that form. During our last episode, I talked a little bit about remaining grateful during the pandemic. I think it's important to keep a positive mindset during all this shelter in place. And I talked a little about how the world keeps spinning and birthdays and surgeries keep happening. And I specifically referenced birthdays and surgeries because I had someone with a birthday in my life and I had someone with a surgery in my life. The surgery was my father. And unfortunately, that surgery it wasn't successful, let's say, and my father ended up passing away. And so I just want to take this moment to reflect on the fact that, yeah, I mean, we skipped an episode of Unbillable last week just because I wasn't, frankly, up to filming an episode. You know, my father's someone who's very close to me, and this is a really difficult time to lose a loved one. Now, I want to be honest and say it's got to be a hard time anytime to lose a loved one, undoubtedly, especially now that I've experienced this. I feel like I know firsthand just how hard it is to lose a parent because, again, I just lost my dad. But during this pandemic, there's some unique characteristics about losing my father that I just want people to kind of understand. And the first one is, like, we weren't able to visit him in the hospital. The hospital had extremely limited visitation rules, and so no one was allowed to see my father in the ICU. In fact, my mom was able to be the only visitor because they knew, let's just say, things took a turn for the worse. And I'm just grateful that she had that opportunity. The second thing I want people to consider is we can't have a service. I mean, if you think about it, we have family from kind of various parts of California, and they'd love to get together to honor my father. And trust me, as his son, I appreciate that. I appreciate that wholeheartedly. But the fact remains that we just can't have a gathering like that. And so let's just say we're going to do it in a future date. But think about that. I mean, think about not just losing a loved one and not being able to be there, but that the fact you can't really honor them. These really are some unique times that we're going through. Okay, Mr. Fancy Pants, so business is more than 7%? I don't want to brag or say anything like that. I mean, that's ridiculous. Business is terribly down. But I just overstated it previously. I mean, there's more there's more non-litigated matters coming to the surface than I realized. I think the fact that I can't use the court system, or the fact that the court system is on such a limited and emergency-only basis, has really given an opportunity for the non-litigated cases, the non-litigated issues to come to the surface. So for example, I'm working on like a real estate transaction involving a government entity. It's an essential business endeavor because they need that real estate transaction to close. An interesting thing is anyone needed or any work required by the transaction instantly becomes essential business. So that's how I start working on it, and other people like appraisers or let's say the real estate professionals involved, that business definitely becomes essential. There's also people making insurance related claims. I mean, again, the court system can't be utilized, but if you need to make an insurance claim, you can definitely do that. And we've been working with clients to write letters and communicate with insurance companies, both on behalf of claims they're making and defending against claims made by others. All right, be quiet again, please. Quiet on the set. A funny thing about all these forms is some of them are for the landlord to give to the tenant, some are for a tenant to give to a landlord. I mean, what really are these forms all about? They're all about communication. I mean, one is a form for a tenant to fill out to inform the landlord that they've lost income due to the pandemic, and one is a form for the landlord to fill out asking the tenant if everything's okay in light of the pandemic. I mean, what these forms are, they're a line of communication. They're a spark, maybe, for the landlord and tenant to communicate about what their experiences are in light of the pandemic, what needs they might have, how things have changed for each of them. Like I said, earlier, we're all sort of in this together, yet we're not. We all have different experiences or in different positions. And a landlord and tenant, they're unified by their lease agreement. So, in California, we definitely have a moratorium on evictions, but that moratorium won't last forever. It's just temporary. So you can use that temporary period of no eviction as a landlord to stew and be angry about not getting paid rent, but it does you no good. In fact, in my opinion, you should be using that time to kind of negotiate with your tenant. Think about options and ways you can work together. If you're a tenant, yeah, you have a few weeks where you can stay in the unit without having paid rent, sure. But that little window is not going to last forever. And so you should be using that time to talk to your landlord about avenues and tools they can use to maybe make things easier on you. When I want to shoot this scene right now for Unbillable, I got to ask my kids to be quiet. I got to ask them to be quiet. They don't know to be quiet without me telling them or talking to them about it. We have to communicate with each other so that they know what I expect from them and I know what to expect from them. And you're, as a tenant, or you, as a landlord, need to do the same thing. We made an incredible channel trailer. When I say we, I'm the face on the screen, but the guy holding the camera is the one who made it. Be sure to check that out and let us know what you think. Channel trailer, Unbillable, do it. More than anything else, my father instilled in me, I think, really two important traits. One is to be strong, especially when it's easy to be weak. And the second is to be generous, especially when it's easy not to be. So in a weird way, my father's passing, I think, has highlighted those two important characteristics. The first is it's been extremely difficult to not have been able to be there in the hospital, but at the same time, it was good to be strong for my mom and other siblings and relatives that had a hard time with this experience as well. On the other hand, it's been incredible to have this outpouring of stories of my father's generosity, and it's highlighted maybe a need for me to be a little more generous with my time, with maybe some of the resources that we have. My father was a good man. I plan to do what I can to kind of honor that legacy. I plan to do what I can to kind of do things the way he would have liked them done. And look at these. In some ways, I'm already doing them. In addition to communicating with a landlord and tenant about what to do if you're not getting paid, some of these forms also talk specifically about showing your home or showing your property in the event you're trying to sell it, or if you're going to view properties if you're looking to buy. Now, we should all kind of take a moment and remember, the only people that should be really involved in transactions are people that are in an absolute need. They shouldn't be like kind of a third or fourth or investment property type transaction. And so what these forms specifically advise you to do is follow the law. That's an interesting one. Follow the law. And then in addition, they tell you things like wash your hands, try not to touch your face, keep your social distancing. And then again, at the bottom, it tells you by entering the home, you understand that you're taking a risk and you know what that risk is and you're willing to accept that risk. And it's also telling the seller that you're letting people, strangers that you don't know, into your home and that there's a risk involved with that and that risk is heightened right now due to a global pandemic. Think about that. Think about what you're signing. Pay attention to what you're signing. Read what you're signing. one of the hardest parts of handling the essential business has to be just kind of keeping my business with my employees furloughed still operational. I mean, I'm the only one in there, so when I refer to the we, the we isn't really a we, it's just a me. And so I still have to go to the office to kind of keep the place operational. I gotta pay the electric bill, I gotta pay the rent, I gotta do the things necessary to keep the place working. I mean, in fact, we had a problem with our scanner. I mean, no offense to my printer scanner, that's one of the MVPs of the office, day in and day out, always doing its job. But we've had a problem with the scanner, and frankly, because of the pandemic and the shelter orders, it's been very hard to get that scanning problem fixed. And I mean, it's also about working with employees, making sure all of their issues are handled and letting them know that, you know, the business stands behind them if they need anything. And hopefully if they're watching this, they know that. And that's what's most important, really. It's being able to keep yourself in a position to be ready to go when the pandemic orders get lifted. And then, of course, striking the subscribe button over there and being sure to catch another episode of Unbillable by clicking right down here.